Welcome back to the news at 10. River State residents can now move around freely after the state government today lifted the curfew it imposed in the aftermath of last Saturday's presidential election. The secretary to the River State government announced the lifting of the movement restriction in a statement, saying, quote, "The curfew declared by the state government earlier in the week has been lifted with immediate effect. Consequently, residents in the state are free to go about their lawful duties and continue to keep the peace at all times." End of quote. The curfew, which was in effect between the hours of 7 p.m. to 6 p.m., was imposed on Monday, March the 31st, in order to stabilize the security situation and prevent further breach of peace. Now, the media in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is reporting that another Nigerian, a certain Mr. Simon Izaputa, has been sentenced to death in Indonesia for drug trafficking. The district court in Jakarta found Mr. Izaputa guilty of controlling a drug transaction from his prison cell, where he was serving a 20-year jail term for drug offences. Meanwhile, Amnesty International says in its annual report on the death penalty worldwide that Indonesia stands out for all the wrong reasons. The head Amnesty researcher in Indonesia says that there are many issues in the country, in particular fair trial concerns, that make death sentences more complicated. Well, the political season in the country notwithstanding, the Nigerian police have continued to do their duty of law enforcement as a number of alleged criminals have been arrested across the country for various crimes, ranging from armed robbery and kidnapping to car theft. Our correspondent Olumide Macaulay reports.
The perennial battle between good and evil continues. The Nigeria police on one side, alleged criminals on the other. One charged to enforce the law, the other looking for ways to break it. Delta State. The Delta State Police Command cracks down on a gang of armed robbers harassing Ogashuku and its surrounding areas.
When the police station at Ogashuku Division had a distress call that there's armed robbers operating in their area, the police moved into action, and during the gun duel, 4 men were gunned down, but one escaped with a gun shot on his leg.
They were also accused of robbing a family at Ogbofo quarters, raping a girl, and robbing people at Umokwe, Ogashuku. Anambra State. The Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS Okuzu, against violent criminals, arresting 20 suspects for kidnapping, armed robbery, and car snatching. In a gun shootout while resisting arrest, some are taken alive, others are not so lucky.
We want to re-emphasize that crime does not pay. Every criminal should desist from criminality. If they must continue in crime, they should, for their own interest, stay away from Anambra State, because Anambra State is too hot for them.
The Anambra State Governor, Willie Obiano, gave the police a thumbs up.
So I commend the Operation Bochapu for immediately following up on the jail of the kidnappers. So I want to seize this opportunity to reassure the Anambra that under my watch, it is zero tolerance for armed robbery and kidnapping.
The Southwest, Oyo State. Political thugs and armed robbers breaching the peace in Ibadan. The new ambush squad of the Oyo State Police Command got the perpetrators.
The group that goes by the name 1 Million Boys is a deadly cult group in Mapo. Were attracted by the pandemonium created by the attack. They moved swiftly and promptly, engaged the hoodlums, overpowered and subdued them. At the end of the confrontation, 18 members of the gang were arrested in the act.
The story of law enforcement is one told in perpetuity as the police do their job to protect Nigerian citizens using the long arm of the law till the last suspect is caught. Olumide Macaulay, Channels Television News.
First Bank. You first.
Hello, welcome to Business News. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry has called on the President-elect, General Muhammadu Buhari, to address the high cost of doing business in Nigeria. In a statement released by the Chamber, it urged the incoming regime to ensure the blocking of all fiscal leakages, including the management of petroleum product subsidy, pension funds, import duty waivers, among other issues. The LCCI is also asking the Buhari-led administration to tackle the challenge of high cost of governance, collapse of the rail system, and poor power supply. Other expectations of the chamber include the acceleration of reforms on the oil and gas sector in order to attract more private investments in both the upstream and downstream segments. The LCCI is, however, optimistic that the success of the presidential election will mitigate the anxiety and uncertainty that characterized the business environment before the elections, and also adding that investors' confidence will be positively impacted by this development. Meanwhile, Nigeria's external reserves continued its downward slide as it shed $1.55 billion in March. Data from the central banks indicates that the reserves decreased by 4.9% from $31.35 billion on February the 27th to $29.79 billion on March the 30th. The external reserves have fallen by $4.49 billion, or maybe 13% since the beginning of the year. The continued decline of the external reserve is responsible for the negative outlook recently pronounced on Nigeria by Fitch Ratings. A recent statement issued by the agency also affirms that Nigeria's long-term foreign and local currency issuer default ratings, IDRS, have been revised to negative from stable. Meanwhile, overnight lending rates fell to an average of 9.6% today, boosted by the central bank's retirement of 148 billion naira in mature treasury bills. The secured open buyback fell to a 9% low from 12% last week. Overnight placement also eased to 10.25% compared with 13% last week. And dealers say that rates could rise marginally on the expected recall of some funds from commercial banks by the central bank to meet the lender's cash reserves requirement. The yield on Nigeria's 5-year bond dropped further today, shedding 25 basis points as offshore funds placed buy orders with banks. Dealers returned to the market following the victory of General Muhammadu Buhari at the just concluded presidential poll. The 2019 debt, one of the maturities listed on JP Morgan's government bond index emerging markets, had fallen more than 110 basis points in the past 2 days on renewed sentiment. Now, the bond yield was quoted at 13.86% in early trade, down from 15.03% on Tuesday and 14.11% yesterday. The euphoria of the presidential polls continued at the Nigerian equities market as the all-share index climbed by 3.92% to close at 35,728.12. Bolaji Akinwale joins us with the rest of today's closing figures.
Welcome to the Stock Market Reports. The euphoria of the presidential polls has still been felt at the Nigeria equities market. A day after the local bourse raked in over 8% gain, investors are yet to let go. Market heavyweights still top the headlines as the driver of the positive performance. The all-share index garnered 3.92% to close at 35,728.12. On the gainers list, Nestle recorded 44 naira 60 kobo, 40 oil followed with 19 naira 78 kobo, and Seplat with 14 naira 49 kobo. On the laggards list, the Kuma oil dropped 1 naira 46 kobo, coming ahead of Presco and Stanbic IBTC. On the volume chart, Guaranty Trust Bank, which recently declared a dividend payout, pulled the highest unit of shares of 141 million. Fidelity Bank and UBA followed. The total volume came in at over 1 billion shares, valued at 18.7 billion naira. And that's it on the stock market reports. I am Bolaji Akinwale.
Thanks a lot, Bolaji. As the president-elect gets set to resume office, The leadership of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, is asking General Muhammadu Buhari to prioritize the prevention of incessant industrial action by the oil and gas sector. While congratulating General Buhari for his victory at the polls, the association's president, Comrade Chinedu Okonkwo, says IPMAN is looking forward to a robust working relationship with the president-elect. This IPMAN hopes will help put a halt or reduce drastically the dislocations that have bedeviled Nigeria's major revenue earner. Meanwhile, crude oil price continued its free fall, shedding 4% as officials remain in nuclear talks with Iran, which could allow the Islamic State release more crude oil into the world markets. Brent crude slipped $2.19 at $45.91 per barrel after settling $1.99 higher yesterday. U.S. crude was down $1.07 at $49.02 per barrel. Well, that's it on Business News. I'm Anne Nwawado. Ijoma will be back with the rest of the news at 10, but let's take a quick look at the global market figures for today.
First Bank. You first.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Court of Arbitration for Sports clears Morocco to play in the 2017 and 2019 Africa Cup of Nations. That's on Sports News.